Step out of the vehicle, and please keep your hands in plain sight." The beam of the flashlight danced gently into the old man's eyes. As the clock struck midnight, the weary pickup truck came to a gentle halt at the entrance of the police station. With beads of sweat cascading down his face, he gracefully opened the truck bed and remarked, "I'm merely returning what is not rightfully mine." A sharp, piercing alert resonated throughout the yard. Moments later, military SUVs gracefully encircled the building, their shadowy forms gliding from the embrace of the night. "Welcome to Great Man, a place where elegance meets charm. Let us unveil the truth of what truly transpired." Edward Briggs, at the age of 78, was a solitary soul residing in a quaint rural abode that graced the eastern fringes of Texas. His weathered hands, adorned with the calluses of years spent in earnest toil, told a story of dedication and resilience. His eyes held the quiet wisdom of a man who had experienced far more than he ever revealed. The townsfolk referred to him simply as Old Man Briggs, a steadfast presence in their midst, who, though often solitary, never missed an opportunity to offer a courteous nod to those he encountered along the way. For nearly 6 decades, Edward had navigated the roads in his beloved GMC pickup truck, a 1962 model that had gracefully endured the passage of time, much like himself. The weathered blue paint, the worn leather seats, the engine that declared its presence from afar, were all as well known to the inhabitants of Mill Creek County as the courthouse clock tower or the venerable oak on Main Street. The children of the town affectionately dubbed it the War Truck, a name inspired by its weathered scars and vintage charm, yet none could fathom the deeper significance woven into their playful title. Each Tuesday and Friday, the townsfolk would catch a glimpse of Edward as he glided through the streets, seeking his modest essentials. He would select the same few items, tendering exact change with a quiet grace, engaging in only the briefest of exchanges. He was not devoid of warmth. His words possessed a certain economy, as though he had discovered long ago that speech was a precious resource to be cherished, much like ammunition or fresh water in the midst of a vast field. On this enchanting Tuesday evening, as twilight gracefully embraced the horizon, Edward engaged in a most peculiar ritual. After years of monotony, he was stepping into the unknown. Within the cozy confines of his humble abode, he tenderly enveloped a delicate object in gentle fabric, nestled it within a beautifully crafted wooden box, and fastened it with an unadorned brass lock. His movements were intentional, almost sacred, as though he were cradling something of boundless worth. Beside the box, he laid a handwritten letter, the elegant cursive revealing the subtle tremor that had taken residence in his right hand over the years. The envelope bore a modest address, Precinct 17 Police Department. The letter within whispered, "Convey this to Precinct 17. Allow no other hands to caress it." Edward gently set both items upon the passenger seat of his truck, igniting the familiar purr of the engine, and embarked on the 40-mile journey to the county seat. He drove in silence, devoid of music or company, accompanied only by the harmonious hum of an engine that had been his steadfast companion throughout the journey of his life. As Edward approached the county line, he found himself faced with a security checkpoint, an unexpected sight along this tranquil stretch of highway, yet not entirely surprising in light of the recent border concerns. A youthful officer, likely no older than 25, gracefully signaled for him to come to a stop. Edward obliged, bringing the time-worn vehicle to a graceful halt beside the shimmering lights. The officer requested, with a gentle authority, "License and registration, please," as he briefly illuminated the cab with his flashlight. Edward delicately reached into his pocket, drawing forth a wallet that bore the marks of time, much like all his cherished belongings. From it, he revealed a driver's license, its photograph so faded that it was scarcely discernible, yet the expiration date remained valid. The officer regarded it with a hint of skepticism. "What draws you out at this hour, Mr. Briggs?" "Police business," Edward replied, his voice imbued with the rich, textured resonance of age and the quietude of infrequent use. "Is this a matter of police affairs?" The officer's tone took on a hint of suspicion. "Would you permit me a glimpse into your vehicle?" Walter's hand glided tenderly toward the wooden box, a gesture filled with care. "What lies within my truck is not meant for the gaze of the inquisitive, my dear." It is designated solely for Precinct 17 and nothing else. The officer's hand gracefully drifted nearer to his holster. Kindly step out of the vehicle, sir. I must take a moment to inspect the contents of your truck. I cannot allow you to proceed with that, Edward declared, his tone steady yet resolute. This is no ordinary cargo. In a matter of moments, 2 more patrol cars gracefully made their entrance. Edward discovered himself encircled by officers, their posture indicating they perceived him as a figure he had never embodied in his extensive existence, a menace. This is your final opportunity, my dear sir. Please step out of the vehicle and allow us to conduct a search, or we may need to hold you for a moment. Edward gazed upon the youthful faces encircling him, perceiving the delicate blend of confidence and hesitation reflected in their eyes, and thus he arrived at his resolution. He would never betray a promise held dear for 47 years, not even in this moment. I sense you may be mistaken, he murmured softly, yet I shall not stand in your way. As the officers drew near with handcuffs in hand, Walter's mind wandered not to his own dignity, but to the box that held something far more cherished than his freedom, a symbol of honor that had long awaited its return home. If you hold the belief that a remarkable soul merits remembrance, we kindly invite you to remain with us. The Precinct 17 station hummed with an enchanting energy on that Tuesday night. Whispers of the elderly man in custody traveled swiftly through the air, some suggesting he might be a smuggler, while others pondered if he was merely a soul lost to the ravages of time and memory. Officers moved Edward through the system with a precision that felt almost detached, capturing fingerprints from hands that had once engaged in far more significant endeavors than they could ever comprehend. The booking officer observed a peculiar detail as he meticulously recorded Walter's information. The old man's fingerprints evoked an unusual reaction within the system, not a mere criminal record, but rather a distinctive security alert that the officer had never before experienced. He brought it to the attention of his supervisor, who simply shrugged and recommended they proceed with the usual protocols as they awaited further clarity from the system. Captain Reynolds, the night shift supervisor, watched from behind the glass partition of his office as Edward sat gracefully on the metal bench, revealing neither resistance nor concern. There was an unsettling quality to the old man's demeanor that captivated Reynolds. A quiet dignity enveloped him, accompanied by an unmistakable absence of fear or confusion. This was not the usual portrait of an individual ensnared in unlawful deeds. Who was it that summoned this? Reynolds inquired of the desk sergeant. At the county line checkpoint, sir, the seasoned gentleman exhibited a certain air of suspicion. He declined a vehicle search, asserting he had matters of police business, yet chose to remain elusive about the details. Reynolds observed Walter's demeanor, the poised spine, the hands resting delicately on his knees, and the serene gaze that appeared to penetrate the lively station rather than merely regard it. After 23 years in law enforcement, Reynolds had cultivated an eye for the unmistakable grace of military bearing whenever it graced his presence. In the meantime, Officer Tanner and his partner gently carried the wooden box, guiding her into the evidence room. With a touch of care, they adorned their hands with gloves, meticulously inspecting the treasures they had uncovered during the vehicle search. Tanner observed the peculiar craftsmanship of the box, its hand-carved details whispering tales from decades past. His beloved gestured towards ethereal symbols that adorned the lower edge. There exists a certain allure in this moment. It appears to have been delicately stamped and then gracefully sanded down. With the necessary authorization recorded, they gracefully unlocked the brass clasp, gently lifting the lid to unveil the treasure within. Their bewilderment was instant and deeply felt. Cradled within the sumptuous velvet was a military insignia, a testament to exquisite craftsmanship. It displayed unique markings that set it apart from conventional military decorations, featuring a specialized unit emblem adorned with an encrypted serial number along its edge, accompanied by an official seal that neither officer could recall from their training. This has a military essence, yet it feels distinct, Tanner remarked, capturing its essence from various angles, careful not to make direct contact. It certainly exudes an air of sophistication, as suggested by its exquisite design. His beloved had already unveiled the letter discovered in Walter's truck. Allow me to share this with you. The bearer graciously entrusts to Precinct 17 the original insignia of the Echo Shadow Unit, delicately retrieved from Firebase Horizon, Vietnam, in the year of 1975, to be returned to the rightful military authorities upon the confirmation of Protocol Silverline. Let us cherish the memory of those who have fallen. May those who bide their time discover tranquility. It bears the signature of Colonel Matthew Briggs, United States Marine Corps, retired. Tanner inquired about our gentleman out there. It must be. Behold this. He gracefully presented Walter's identification alongside the letter. Though they share the same last name, this Colonel Briggs is quite distinct. I must admit, Echo Shadow Unit is a name that has yet to grace my ears. Have you, my dear? Tanner gently shook his head, a subtle gesture filled with unspoken thoughts. We ought to guide this through the system. Captain Reynolds had already beckoned Edward to his office for an intimate interrogation. The distinguished gentleman sat across the desk, his posture impeccably straight, a testament to his enduring grace through the passage of time. Mr. Briggs, we have taken a closer look at the treasures within the box you were carrying. Reynolds commenced, gazing intently at Walter's visage, seeking the subtle nuances of his reactions. Would you be so kind as to elucidate the reason behind your possession of what seems to be military property, potentially of considerable worth? Edward held the captain's gaze with unwavering grace. I shall return it to its rightful place. What compels one to choose a police station over a military base for such matters? Protocol Silverline designates civilian authority as the initial point of contact, Edward responded, employing language that seemed absent from conventional police training. Reynolds inclined his form gracefully, drawing nearer. All this trouble could have been averted had you taken a moment to articulate your thoughts to the officers at the checkpoint. A wistful smile graced Walter's weathered visage. Some vows demand a touch of secrecy, dear Captain, even when the moment proves challenging. Ah, so you are connected to the esteemed Colonel Matthew Briggs? Reynolds inquired, gently tapping the letter with a delicate touch. In a fleeting moment, Walter's eyes revealed a depth that transcended the mere exchange of words. Perhaps sorrow, perhaps a sense of honor. I have always found the strength to do what is right, regardless of titles. The captain was on the verge of delving deeper when Officer Tanner rapped insistently at the door. My dear sir, we have just processed the insignia through the system, he murmured, his voice softening. It awakened a certain sense of urgency. A priority communication has graced us from the esteemed Department of Defense. We are being guided to ensure the safety of both the item and the individual, refraining from any additional inquiries. Reynolds wore a frown, a shadow of contemplation gracing his features. By what right do you speak? At the level of the Joint Chiefs. My dear sir, the message clearly conveys that one must refrain from handling the contents of the box. The person in your care is a former commanding officer of the esteemed Shadow Echo Unit. Military representatives are on their way. When might I anticipate your arrival? 60 minutes. The room embraced a hush as the weight of the implications enveloped them. Edward Briggs, the serene elder with his time-worn pickup truck, had just received recognition from the esteemed ranks of military command. Whatever he bore held such weight that it compelled an immediate reaction from authorities transcending the boundaries of their jurisdiction. In the station bullpen, officers congregated in intimate clusters, their voices soft and low, weaving a tapestry of whispered conversations. The early notions surrounding the bewildered elderly gentleman dissipated, giving way to musings about the true essence of Edward Briggs and the secrets he had been tenderly safeguarding within his weathered old truck. From the office window, Edward caught sight of their curious gazes, filled with unspoken inquiries. He maintained an air of tranquility, his hands gently poised upon his knees. The wooden box now rested upon Captain Reynolds' desk, a delicate bridge connecting realms that most could only dream of. Mr. Briggs, Reynolds finally spoke, it appears we have committed a considerable misstep in our approach to this matter. Edward gently shook his head. You fulfilled your duty, Captain, just as I have fulfilled mine. Shall we indulge in a cup of coffee as we await our moment? Reynolds extended his offer, his tone imbued with respect, perhaps even a hint of apology. Black, if you have it, Edward replied, his voice carrying the weight of the long drive behind him. As midnight drew near, the station's ambience shifted from the ordinary to a palpable sense of eager anticipation. Each officer felt the weight of an extraordinary moment, though words eluded them in capturing its essence. The security protocols had been refined, the building fortified, and Edward Briggs, no longer a suspect yet not entirely an esteemed guest, awaited with quiet anticipation the arrival of those who grasped the profound essence of his mission. Have you ever witnessed a kind soul held captive by mere suspicion? Share your thoughts, for I have encountered it. Should you have experienced something akin? At the delicate hour of 12:38 a.m., the perimeter sensors of the station stirred to life. The officers monitoring the security cameras beheld, with increasing wonder, as 6 identical black SUVs adorned with military insignia glided into the parking lot in flawless formation, encircling the building with an air of tactical grace. There were no sirens, no flashing lights, only the graceful precision of a meticulously coordinated military endeavor. The vehicle's headlights extinguished in unison, casting the scene once more into shadow, illuminated only by the soft glow of the station's exterior lights. As the doors gracefully swung open, uniformed personnel stepped forth in harmonious synchrony, establishing a secure perimeter with movements that hinted at a depth far beyond mere routine military police duties. Each individual glided with a harmonious intent, gracefully positioning themselves to artfully secure every entrance and exit of the building. Within the station, officers congregated around the monitors, their expressions a blend of bewilderment and unease as they observed the silent deployment unfold before them. The night dispatcher endeavored to establish radio contact, yet was met with nothing but a curt reply. A secure channel has been gracefully established. Please await the arrival of the senior officer. What on earth is this? Whispered one of the younger officers. Is this a form of training exercise, perhaps? A seasoned sergeant gently shook his head, a subtle expression of contemplation gracing his features. I have yet to encounter any training quite like this. These are the insignias of Joint Special Operations. Whatever this may be, it transcends our humble station. Captain Reynolds adjusted his uniform with a graceful precision, commanding his officers to assume a posture of respect and readiness. What was unfolding surpassed the bounds of ordinary protocol. The grand front doors swung open to reveal 3 figures, 2 military police officers standing resolutely beside a distinguished gentleman in his 60s, adorned in the elegant uniform of a 3-star general. General Thomas Harrington of the United States Marine Corps gracefully introduced himself to the officer at the front desk, presenting credentials that effortlessly commanded unwavering cooperation. I see that you have Edward Briggs secured within a wooden box he delivered to your station. Indeed, sir, the desk sergeant responded with a courteous nod. Captain Reynolds finds himself in the company of Mr. Briggs within the confines of his office. The item is safely secured. Kindly escort me to them without delay. As the general was gracefully escorted through the station, each officer present stood at attention, acutely aware of the significance of the moment. As he stepped into the captain's office, his gaze was drawn instantly to Walter, who had gracefully risen to his feet, a fluidity in his movement that masked the passage of time. The unfolding events left all in attendance utterly captivated. The general, a figure of authority who commanded legions and offered counsel to presidents, approached Edward Briggs with a graceful military salute. Commander Briggs, he uttered with a deep sense of reverence. It is truly an honor, sir. Edward responded to the salute with impeccable grace. The honor belongs to me, dear General, although it has been nearly half a century since I held the title of commander. Captain Reynolds and his officers shared a moment of perplexity, their eyes meeting in silent inquiry. The elderly man they had detained, a serene presence clad in tattered garments and navigating an age-old pickup truck, was being spoken to with a reverence befitting him by one of the most esteemed officers in the United States military. The general cast a glance towards Captain Reynolds. I beg your pardon for the rather theatrical arrival, Captain, yet this issue pertains to the national security protocols set forth during the Vietnam conflict. Would it be possible for us to utilize your conference room? I must ensure that Commander Briggs is debriefed with the utmost care and attention. In the span of 20 minutes, the station's grandest conference room had undergone a remarkable transformation. Maps lay gracefully across the table, classified files unveiled, and the recording equipment silenced. The wooden box rested gracefully at the center, now unveiled to disclose the insignia that had evoked such an extraordinary response. The general spoke to the gathered officers, with Edward seated gracefully beside him. What I am about to share with you is of a delicate nature, yet in light of the circumstances, you truly deserve to grasp the importance of the events unfolding this evening. He indicated with a graceful gesture toward Walter. Before you stands Edward Briggs, the former commander of the elusive Shadow Echo Unit, a special operations team that, by all accounts, has never graced the pages of history. In the year of 1975, as the leaves turned in the autumn of Saigon, his unit embarked on a clandestine extraction mission that unfolded with tragic consequences. The room was enveloped in a serene silence, as all gazes gracefully shifted between the general and the elderly gentleman who sat with a quiet dignity by his side. Commander Briggs emerged as the sole survivor of a mission that preserved 37 lives, yet it came at the heartbreaking cost of 11 brave souls who served alongside him. Prior to the evacuation, he retrieved the unit insignia, the very one nestled within this box, and vowed with deep sincerity to the families of his fallen comrades that he would, in due time, secure the rightful acknowledgement of their sacrifice when the constraints of classified protocols would allow. The general delicately lifted the insignia, a gesture imbued with reverence. This emblem holds within it the delicate microfilm documentation of the mission, along with the names of those who served, a treasure of information that remained shrouded in secrecy until the recent declassification of Operation Silver Line, just 3 weeks past. He gazed upon Walter. Your son, Colonel Matthew Briggs, has gracefully carried forth your noble quest for recognition. Before his untimely departure last year during a covert mission, he ultimately obtained the necessary approval for the Silver Line protocols to be set in motion. The missive he entrusted to you held the essential authentication codes. In Walter's gaze, a delicate flicker of emotion began to emerge, the intertwining of a father's pride and sorrow. Matthew always grasped the essence of duty, he murmured softly. The general spoke directly to Captain Reynolds, his voice carrying a weight of authority and respect. This evening, Captain, your officers overlooked a bewildered elderly gentleman. They intercepted a final mission undertaken by one of the most celebrated covert operators in American military history, a man devoted to honoring a promise made to his fallen brothers, a vow that has endured for nearly 5 decades. The youthful officer who had first apprehended Edward gracefully stepped forward. My dear sir, I find it necessary to extend my sincerest apologies to Mr. Briggs. If I had known, Edward lifted his hand with a tender grace. You have fulfilled your obligation, my dear son. I have never held anyone to blame for that. The general inclined his head in acknowledgement. Commander Briggs was not seeking personal acclaim. He was honoring the cherished bond between warriors, ensuring that no one is ever left behind, not even in the echoes of memory. Every officer in the room stood poised, a wave of understanding enveloping them. The man they had handcuffed and ushered through their system bore a weight of honor that surpassed the years of most in the room. Today, the general continued, we did not arrive with the intention of taking anyone into custody. We arrived to accompany Commander Briggs to Andrews Air Force Base, where, at dawn tomorrow, the President will graciously acknowledge the Shadow Echo Unit and bestow upon Commander Briggs the honors that his brave men have rightfully earned through their sacrifice. As Edward prepared to depart, Captain Reynolds gracefully advanced. My dear sir, it would be our utmost pleasure to arrange a police escort for your esteemed journey. Edward smiled, a sincere expression that graced his weathered face with a newfound warmth. That won't be required, Captain, yet there is one matter to discuss. Whatever you desire, my dear sir. I wish to take my own truck on a journey to Andrews. It has guided me to this point. It appears that this journey is destined to reach its graceful conclusion. The general let out a hearty laugh. Such a delightful arrangement can be made, Commander. That venerable GMC has rightfully secured its place in this tale as well. As Edward strolled through the station toward the exit, every officer present graced the hallway, standing at attention with an air of dignity. The elderly man, clad in modest attire, glided among them with a serene assurance, embodying the essence of one who has always understood his intrinsic value without the need for external affirmation. a valiant warrior embarking on one last quest, embodying the unwavering devotion that has shaped his existence. Express your sentiments with a simple word if you believe that true recognition has finally been bestowed upon what is just. A week later, both local and national media outlets elegantly shared the unfolding tale. The county's oldest truck is owned by a secret war hero, a former commander of Shadow Echo, who has been honored by the military after a remarkable 47 years. The ceremony at Andrews Air Force Base unfolded with a blend of reverence and joy, a long-awaited tribute to valor and sacrifice. In the footage, Edward Briggs, adorned in a distinguished formal dress uniform embellished with rows of previously classified medals, stood gracefully beside the president as the names of his fallen comrades were solemnly recited. For each name, a cherished family member stepped forward to accept the honors, many encountering Edward for the first time, despite the fact that he had held their beloved ones close to his heart for nearly 5 decades. The metamorphosis was truly enchanting. Vanished was the once stooped, weathered gentleman clad in his time-worn attire. In his stead stood a warrior, his presence restored by the embrace of his uniform, shoulders poised, chin lifted, eyes bright and intent. Observers remarked on the president's remarkable deference towards him, as he listened with rapt attention while Edward softly recounted the stories of each fallen man. Behind the ceremonial stage, Walter's cherished GMC pickup stood proudly, nestled between 2 polished military vehicles, a testament to enduring memories. It had been meticulously washed and polished for the occasion, yet Edward had asked that the dents and scratches remain untouched. He had elucidated that they are woven into the very fabric of the tale. As he was beckoned to speak before the assembly, Edward glided toward the podium, embodying the serene grace that had defined his existence. The audience, comprised of military personnel, government officials, and the families of the fallen, embraced a hushed stillness, their hearts united in anticipation. "Honor," he began, his voice unwavering despite the passage of time, "does not dwell in ribbons or in the applause of the crowd. It resides in the vows we cherish, even when the world forgets we uttered them." The gentle utterance of those simple words, delivered by a man who had truly embraced their essence, reverberated through the gathering and reached far beyond, touching the hearts of millions who watched the broadcast. In a time marked by fleeting notoriety and abandoned promises, Edward Briggs emerged as a beacon of an alternative existence, one where devotion lingered long after the spotlight faded and the world shifted its gaze. Following the ceremony, Edward gracefully declined the military transport that was extended to him. Instead, he gracefully stepped into his time-worn GMC pickup, embarking on the journey home, with a military escort trailing at a respectful distance. Along the highway, a gathering of souls adorned the overpasses and roadsides, drawn together by the whispers of his tale. They gracefully waved their flags and held signs, expressing their gratitude for a service that many had only just discovered days before. In Mill Creek County, the return held a deeper significance. The checkpoint where he had been halted now showcased officers poised with elegance as he glided by. The children who once giggled at his war truck now gazed upon it with a newfound respect, recognizing that certain things were their scars with a noble grace. The military bestowed upon Edward a distinguished commendation, honoring his steadfast loyalty to principle amidst the ever-shifting tides of the world. What held greater significance for him, however, was the delicate brass plaque that was later affixed to the dashboard of his truck, elegantly inscribed with the words "Edward Briggs, Keeper of Promises for 47 years." Perhaps the most touching moment was the serene assembly that took place the subsequent Sunday. In a quiet and unassuming manner, the families of the Shadow Echo unit made their way to Walter's humble abode. They presented photographs, letters, and tales of the men who had not returned, sharing cherished memories with the one soul who had never let a single face or name fade from her heart. In their union, they fashioned a living tribute, far more profound than any monument wrought from stone or metal. In the months that ensued, Walter's routine remained largely unchanged. He continued to steer his truck into town for provisions, maintaining a simple existence in his rustic abode. Yet there was an undeniable change in the way the world embraced him, and perhaps in the very manner he held himself. The weight of an unfulfilled promise had at last been gently released. As a young reporter approached him outside the charming local diner, inquiring about the sensation of finally having his story unveiled, Edward took a moment to ponder the question with thoughtful grace before responding. "It is not for the sake of recognition that noble souls undertake arduous tasks," he remarked. "We engage in such acts because they resonate with our sense of integrity, regardless of the gaze of others." With a gentle smile, Edward turned away from the persistent reporter, gracefully stepping into his truck before driving off into the distance. A gentleman, serene in the embrace of his past and his rightful place in the tapestry of history, having fulfilled the cherished mission that resided in his heart for nearly 50 years. Have you ever observed a soul who has upheld a promise throughout the entirety of their existence? There are certain noble deeds that require no applause, yet they remain essential to our hearts. Share a moment that revealed to you that true honor resides not in spoken words, but in the subtle grace of quiet actions. Join us at Great Man, where even the most delicate acts of virtue are celebrated, ensuring that honor remains forever cherished.